disaster strikes, what happens to your work? Whether it's hurricanes, floods, or blizzards, these events can disrupt our lives and our jobs in an instant. Is your workplace prepared? Welcome back to the Long Distance Worklife, where we help you lead, work, and thrive in remote and hybrid teams. I'm Marisa Eikenberry, a fellow remote worker, and joining me is my co-host and remote work expert, Wayne Turmel. Hi, Wayne.
Hello there, Marissa. Hello, listeners. Greetings from Las Vegas, where we have set a record for days over 100 degrees and people are melting on the sidewalk. And so disasters and nature and stuff is very much on people's minds.
Right. And so, listeners, as we are recording this, Hurricane Helen just came through multiple states in the past weekend. And so we thought that this would be a really interesting episode while we dive into a very critical topic, which is how workplaces handle natural disasters and ensure that business continues while keeping employees safe. So, Wayne, I just want to start off by saying, all of these different things happen, blizzards, wildfires. We've heard different stuff. Definitely over the past couple of years. And how can organizations ensure that business continuity while prioritizing employees' safety during these natural disasters? Because business can't always stop.
Yeah, therein lies the problem. What I am going to say is based merely on multiple news reports. I'm not taking it from a single source, and I don't know the veracity of it. But we know of at least one company in Tennessee. People wanted to evacuate the workplace. The employer said no until it was too late, and there were 10 or 11 fatalities as a result. This is thankfully not common, but it ain't unheard of either.
Right.
So this is a very real thing. And you can be cynical and say this ties to the whole work in the office, presenteeism kind of thing. But it's also companies are trying to make a living and they're trying to get as much work done as they can before the storm or the fire or whatever it is happens. And occasionally we guess wrong.
Right. Yeah. Weather can be unpredictable in that way.
Yeah. So I am not casting blame other than to say that it happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that does raise the issue of, with sufficient warning, what are the company's plans? How much of a company's work can, in fact, be done off-site? And this is where, to say we are going to abandon remote work and everybody get back to the office, this is exactly the kind of thing that one faces. Before COVID, companies were starting to call them business continuity plans, call them what you want, in place. And some of this is helped by the fact that so much is now on the cloud, or that the servers are somewhere other than the office. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, your office had a huge server farm in it. And if your office went down, so did everything you own and know.
Right.
That's less and less the case now for most organizations. So, what is the plan? First of all, for the data, your business has to survive, your company has to survive. And then how do you ensure that people can get at it? And if you are in a cloud environment, if you are in a paid server environment where the servers are somewhere other than where you are, and if you're experiencing the disaster, hopefully your servers are not.
Right.
What is the plan? And I think that organizations need to have a plan that says even people who don't normally work outside of the office need to know how to access the data. They need to know if they're on a VPN, they need to know how to do that. There needs to be that. And ironically, if you put it in a manual and the manual's in the office and the office is no longer there, that's a problem.
Right.
And I say that I'm not making light of the situation, clearly. So the first thing is think about it from an organization standpoint. If something happens, I mean, we talk in the office all the time about what if Kevin gets hit by a bus.
Yep. We've said
We
that
don't
about
want that to
many,
happen.
many people on our team just because of
We don't
how
want that.
integral they are.
Right. We don't want that to happen. We clearly we keep him wrapped in bubble wrap when he's not in the office. Um, but you have to have those conversations, and it's irresponsible not to.
Right.
If you live in a place that is prone to hurricanes, if you live in a place that is prone to winter blizzards, if you are, whatever it is, that needs to be addressed. How do people, as many people as possible, continue to keep the business afloat? And if you haven't had that conversation, you'd better have. And if people don't have access codes and they don't have, I've heard of people who, when they've returned to the office after COVID, lost their access to the VPN. Is that really what you want, Mr. and Mrs. Business Owner? So
Right.
you need to think about that. You also need to, and this is best done, I think, on a team by team basis, is does everybody know where everybody is? I'll never forget, I had an instructor in one of the buildings at the World Trade Center.
Wow.
The day that 9/11, and I spent 14 really bad hours waiting to hear from that person. She was safe. She was fine. She got out at the first sign of danger. They eliminated the building, all of that good stuff. But for 14 hours, we didn't know where she was, let alone what she was doing with the business, what was going on with the client, none of that. We didn't physically know if she was still with us.
Right.
That's a
terrifying
problem. So do people know when there is a disaster? Is there a plan for letting your peers and your boss know you're okay? Letting your peers and your boss know, I have internet access and I am available, right? Because some people, if you asked internet access, there are things that I could do in your absence, but only if I know that you don't have the internet access.
Well, I was going to say, with that example, we have a person on our team, Guy Harris, who he's in South Carolina. So while his home is safe and his family is safe, he was hit by a lot of this storm and didn't have power and didn't have internet, and thankfully had a generator, but it can only do so much. And he called me very early on to be like, hey, I need you to take care of all the disk support tickets, because I can't help you unless we need to have a phone call about something. But he physically could not get into the back end to help me with anything, and so he made sure to let me know.
So is there a plan, right? Do you have the home phone numbers are no longer a thing, but do you have the personal cell number of all your employees, and do they have each other's, right?
Yeah, or a directory somewhere that they can access to.
Is there a directory that exists? I know teams that put each other in their contact list, because having an online resource doesn't help if you can't get online.
Right. That's fair.
That's a decision, right? You can decide, do people want to be that connected to each other, to assume that everybody's going to be a grown-up and behave responsibly with
right
that.
No drug text to Susan at 2 a.m.
Yeah, but that's a very concrete thing, right, that you can do to help make sure that happens. So you need to think about what's going to happen before it happens. Now, I am firmly of the belief that every time one of these disasters happen, somebody gets convinced that maybe remote work is not the worst thing that could happen. Because even if everybody is physically safe, even if everybody's homes are physically safe, if the office is damaged, if the roads are impassable, if any of that is going on, could we temporarily meet somewhere else and still function?
Well, and on that same line, yeah. Well, I was going to say, on that same line, for people who have teams that are working from home and stuff like that, there's still thunderstorms, snow, lots of rain might cause flooding or whatever. We've all been in situations of, hey, we had a really bad storm here. I don't have internet or I don't have power right now, but it doesn't make sense to go into the office, or in your case, you're states away from the office. It doesn't make sense to do that. Like, what level of flexibility should companies be offering employees for dealing with things like power outages and internet disruptions or personal crises, even during a disaster or just severe weather?
Yeah, I think that there's several levels to this, right? On the most basic level, you need to sit and think about what risk analysis is. What are the odds of something happen, and what are the results if it did? That's
Hmm.
risk analysis in a nutshell, right? So have you done a risk analysis on your business, right? What business absolutely has to be done out of the office? What can be duplicated, conducted elsewhere, whatever, and then what are the plans for that? On an HR level, it's yes, the company is fine, but Marissa's house just got washed away.
Right.
First of all, odds are she's not coming into work a few days.
Yeah,
Do we
I got other
have
priorities, right?
an do we have an ability to absorb that, or are we going to stick to the, well, that's personal time and you've got 5 days to get your insurance together because after that we ain't paying you? And these conversations happen, and they happen all the time. uh, we are very blessed. I mean, we have had some interesting things in this organization in the last year. I'm about to go out for my second knee replacement in a year, and we've kind of worked around that in terms of
Hmm.
time off and all of that. And it's all very civilized. Guy is stuck in a hurricane zone at the moment, you know?
Hmm.
As an organization, we have decided we want to take care of each other.
Right.
And there is a mechanism in place for that, right? First of all, there's a lot of grace, there's a lot of people pitching in and helping each other. That's really the kind of thing that it can happen on the spur of the moment, but boy, it's easier if you've planned it,
Yeah.
if you've
Well,
thought
I was
about it.
gonna say, like, I know that there's also been situations too where it's like, this thing is not important right now. Speaking of spur of the moment, like, my stepdad died last year and I was out for a week because it was just, I just can't right now. And so it was like, podcast didn't get edited, like this show didn't happen for a week or two, like, and I don't want to say like everybody was okay with that, but it was, grace was given, right? You figure out what's the biggest priority here, and frankly, it's not that.
Well, and there are organizations that will tell you that that is the priority and get your butt back here. We've seen it.
Mhm.
We've seen it time and time again. Again, this is where the possibility of remote work, the idea of, even if it's not all the time, can you access the data that you need? Can you reach your customers? Can you reach your teammates? Do we know if we can't reach the boss, who does what?
Right.
Those conversations are uncomfortable and they're weird, but you have to have them. And teams that have had those conversations, and they know if something happens to Guy, Marissa handles that. If
Hmm.
something happens to somebody else, I know the intricate workings of a couple of people here at job, right?
Yeah.
If I have to step in, at least short term, I can do that.
Yeah, basically,
But
make sure
we've
you have a
talked about it.
backup person.
We've talked about it and we've planned for it. A lot of companies, and this is where bad managers get in trouble, because if you aren't used to delegating, if you are used to doing everything yourself, if you don't share the passwords and the information and the workflows and the relationships with other people in the company, if you haven't included your team on that and built into that because you are so important, God forbid something happened to you.
Right.
And, you know, this gets back to wrapping Kevin in bubble wrap. Clearly, it's a founder led company. That's a very serious thing, right? But we could hold the fort for a bit,
Yeah. I was gonna say, and to
you
your point,
know?
like there are plans in place if something should happen. Like, he's got stuff written down in places and knows who to contact, and like we know what to do.
But this all boils down to a couple of things. First of all, you have to trust your employees. You have to trust, and COVID proved this almost beyond a reasonable doubt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we send people to work from home, they're going to slack off. They're not going to. It's not true. When there is a crisis, and COVID was a crisis, when there is something that happens, people naturally pull together. I know Americans like to think they're the only ones that do it, but no, people do that, right? Yeah. They help each other. They come together. They do what they do. So your employees want the company to exist. Your employees want each other to be successful. They want to stay employed, if you want to, you know, put the hierarchy.
We like a paycheck.
You know, for the short term, people will move heaven and earth and they will make it happen, but you have to help them achieve it. So have the conversations. Have not just a central location. I mean, it's great to have everything in a filing cabinet, but if there is a raging wildfire between me and the filing cabinet, that's not going to help.
Right. I do have one last question for you.
It just isn't, not being, and I'm not being facetious other than my normal smart aleck self. This is serious stuff that needs to be done, but they're uncomfortable and they're weird, and there's always something more important that we have to do until there isn't.
Right. And we've talked a lot about business continuity and things like that. But one of the things that one of my last questions for you is like, how can organizations provide meaningful support both during or after a disaster to employees who are being affected by this, and, you know, like home damage, family safety, that kind of stuff? I mean, we've already talked about like checking in and, you know, okay, what can I take from you? But like, what about the person itself?
Yeah, a lot of that is just human grace and kindness.
A strange concept, right?
Well, it is. And when everybody is affected, it's very difficult to read. If there's a team member that I don't normally work with or that I'm not really close to, it might feel uncomfortable and weird,
right,
for me to reach out to them or to offer them something. But generally, most teams have somebody, speaking very generically, politically incorrectly, 8 times out of 10, it's a woman.
That's fair.
Who is the connector, who knows what's going on and will organize getting food to somebody, or making sure that somebody has a roof if they need one, or whatever that is. And we need to encourage those types of relationships, and we need to encourage those kinds of people on our teams.
I would also encourage having a backup, one of those too.
And a backup one of those.
I mean, legitimately, because we had that happen where our connector had an issue and we all had a moment of, well, crap, who is it now? We figured it out, but still.
And figured it out pretty quickly because we wanted to. We cared. We care about our teammates. We care about all the people that we work with. And employers are shocked at how much we care about them.
Right.
They really are.
Oh. Well, Wayne, thank you so much for this. And listeners, if any of you or family members, relatives, friends are affected by the most recent hurricane, our thoughts and prayers are with you. But before we go, I do want to let you know that the second edition of the Long Distance Leader is now available. This updated guide is perfect for navigating today's remote and hybrid work environments. With new principles and proven strategies, Kevin Eikenberry and Wayne Turmel show you how to lead effectively no matter where your team is located. Don't miss out on the latest insights and exercises designed to boost productivity and morale. Order your copy now at longdistanceworklife.com/LDL and strengthen your leadership skills today. Thank you for listening to the Long Distance Work Life. For show notes, transcripts, and other resources, make sure to visit longdistanceworklife.com. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the show so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you're on Apple or Spotify, please give us a rating and review. This helps us know what you love about our show and reach more listeners just like you. Feel free to contact us via email or LinkedIn with the links in our show notes, and let us know you listened to this episode, or even suggest a topic for Wayne and I to tackle in a future episode. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us. And as Wayne likes to say, don't let the weasels get you down.